Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome back to the most spectacular Fischer random tournament of the year. Welcome to the Freestyle Chess G.O.A.T challenge in 2024. We're now in the quarterfinal stage. We're now in the knockout stage, which means that you cannot get back if you lose in the quarterfinals and you're getting kicked out of the event. We'll see now actually 2 rounds of classical time format Fischer random chess between the players, and already in the quarterfinals we had so many great games, so many great derbies, among them of course the most wanted game between Alireza, Firouzja and Magnus Carlsen. So let's see now what happened today. Alireza played with the white pieces. Tomorrow is then Magnus' turn. Magnus will then have also opportunities to do something with the white pieces. Let's see now what happened with white. Alireza Firouzja opened with the move e4 in this particular position. So he advances the pawn, which is supported by the queen. Logical choice, of course. The pawn is powerful in the center of the board. Magnus does the same, e5. We have now here the move b4, and I like also certain strategy when you play Fischer random chess. Of course you cannot have such a deep sort of opening prep, but you see one of the main concepts in Fischer random chess, that you actually advance the pawns that are supported by the heavy artillery, like the queen, like the rook. Here you see already Alireza is building some spaces here on the queen side, tries of course to attack the flanks further with the move b5. So we have here b5 by Magnus. Magnus is not allowing that. Knight to h3 with the preparation to play even kingside Carlsen here by Alireza Firouzja. We have knight to e7, and this was sort of a dirty trick here by Magnus Carlsen. Magnus allowed here Alireza to take the pawn on e5, but then leads into this line, knight to g6. You have to retreat, and then you could lose also your e4 pawn, which is, I think, a good choice here for black, actually, to simplify the game enough. You want to get a draw out of this position in an early stage of the game, and then you want to do something with the white pieces tomorrow. But Alireza is of course also a powerful player. He's not falling for this. He plays now in sort of, I would say, king's gambit style with the move f4. Puts more pressure against the pawn on e5. We have e takes f4 by Magnus, and now kingside Carlsen. We have knight to g6. Magnus holds so far the position here around the square. f4, d3 by Alireza, building a beautiful pawn structure here in the center of the board. Bishop to f6. After bishop to f6, knight to f6 and knight to f4, I would say this is a pretty equal position. Here Magnus needs maybe to play something like queen to e7, and then also Carlsen here on this side of the board. The bishop is very strong here on this diagonal, so I would say this is really an equal position. But now the fun starts. Here Magnus plays the most aggressive line with queen to e5. Of course Alireza protects it, but not only that, he's protecting the knight on f4. There is a certain threat. For instance, if you don't react, then knight takes g6 comes of course with a check, and then you could lose the queen on e5. So that's why here Magnus played rook to e8, supported simply further the queen on e5. Maybe a slightly better choice is to play knight to f4, forcing a different kind of trades of pieces where you still have your healthy pawn structure here, and the rook, I think, is very useful here on this side of the board, where the rook could actually protect the pawn on b5 and could protect actually the queen side. I'm telling you this because you see now how bad it was for Magnus Carlsen to shift the rook towards the center, because actually the game will transpose now simply to the queen side. Something will happen here on the queen side. Something will happen simply on this on the other side of the board. So here, after move queen to g3, as I said, Magnus had immediately the opportunity to simplify the game by playing knight to f4. He played rook to e8. I would not say this is a mistake in accuracy or blunder or something, but you see now how problematic it is, because you don't have here the rook anymore on the queen side. We have knight to g6 by Magnus. By Alireza, pardon me. H takes g6 here by Magnus, which is of course also a decent idea to put more pressure here on the h file, but it doesn't make sense because after queen to e5, rook to e5, the game is really simplified, and now the rook is really on an unnatural square. It's in the center of the board, and Alireza uses this moment and plays now rook to b3 immediately. Tricky ideas here by Alireza. Nothing spectacular, I would say, is going on, But in these types of positions, you're playing on this, I would say, a simple threat rule. You're just creating tiny little threats all over the board. You keep your opponent busy, you keep your opponent occupied. And now there are two main targets, the weak pawn on c7 and also the weak pawn on a7. I think here that it is much easier for white to continue here in this particular position. a6 by Magnus. We have rook to a3, bishop to b7. Now the bishop becomes only a defender, not an attacker here on this diagonal. It becomes simply a defender of the weak pawn on a6. So as I said, maybe it was better to somehow stay with the rook. Imagine maybe the rook here on b6, protecting the pawn on a6. It would be much better to have the rook like this. But okay, here rook to c3. You see again the simple threat idea by Alireza. Nothing spectacular, but it keeps Magnus Carlsen occupied, and Magnus immediately doesn't react correctly. He plays knight to e8, which is, in my opinion, even the first crucial mistake of this particular game, because the problem about this move is that actually you cannot control the dark squares here, the square c5 and also the square a5. A better choice is to play here the move c6. Seems strange to lock your light square bishop here with your own pawn, but now after something like knight to b3, that is a huge threat, and something like, I don't know, bishop to c8, you have to play like this. You have to liberate your square, liberate this other diagonal for the light square bishop. And now, for instance, if knight to c5 happens, you still have the flexibility to play d6, kicking away the knight, and I think black should be again pretty solid here. But what Magnus did here, he played knight to e8. Here Alireza continues, of course, with a powerful knight to b3, attacking c5 and a5. We have kingside castling by Magnus. Even if you play here d6, that's now the issue. We attack the bishop, which comes with the tempo. You have to retreat, and then the knight comes again on a powerful square. It's very tough even to castle here. The f file is open. The bishop will come into the game. This is really powerful knight here in the center of the board. In some lines, rook to e8, rook to e1, d4 could happen. So not a comfortable game here for Magnus Carlsen. Now for knight to b3 and kingside castling, you see now it's very easy for Alireza to play on the simple threat idea. Attacks the bishop, attacks the pawn, and suddenly Magnus Carlsen lost the pawn. As I said, this was a much better sequence with c6, and then retreat, and then you have d6 as a flexibility, and this should be pretty fun. But as I said, knight to b3 in this sequence, Magnus Carlsen simply lost the pawn, and Alireza is already much better here. If white, I think, plays the game correctly, black is already in huge position problem. So bishop to a6, rook to a6, d5, e takes d5, knight to d5. Alireza protects now the pawn on b4, knight to e3, the fork against this piece and also against the rook, rook to e8, and now rook to c6. Good move again by Alireza, protecting the backward pawn on c2, but also attacking the pawn on c7. As I said, much easier here for white to play the game. Knight to d1, rook to d1, we have rook to e7, and now rook to d2. Alireza, of course, is covering the second rank, is not allowing here some dangerous activity by the rooks. We have g5, h3 by Alireza, rook to f5, and now d4. Here Alireza is marching. In some lines you can also try here c4 and then let this pawns roll here on the f5. Very tough position now to play here for Magnus Carlsen. Rook to e1, check, king to h2, rook to f1, and now actually Alireza makes his first mistake in the game. What Alireza has to do here, he has to control the third rank. He has also to control the f file here, because Magnus's main idea here is to play f5, in some lines even f4, and then to deliver checkmate. Here actually the tricky Magnus Carlsen is preparing here a checkmate pattern, a very beautiful mating net against Alireza's king. So it's very tough to find also the best moves here for white. But actually the best move here is to play rook to d3. After potential f5, you have this resource, rook to f3, and you have solved all of your positional problems. This pawn is hanging. If you deliver a check, of course, we'll simply step back. You cannot play g6 because rook to g6 is going to happen, so you don't have such a great attack. If you trade off here, rook to f3, g takes f3, only with the rook, this is not such a dangerous position. Here Alireza has his 4 versus 2 situation. I think this should be then game over here for black. As I said, this was the main defensive idea here for Alireza, but he played now rook to c3, and actually he brought here Magnus Carlsen back into the game. Really wild stuff, that even this kind of a move is not working, because now after move f5, here Magnus Carlsen played. Now this whole idea with rook to f3 is not working, because we can still play g6, and you see your rook is not anymore on the 6th rank. So here Magnus would actually protect his pawn and still would have this dangerous checks. Of course, first the check and then g6 and similar stuff. f4 very dangerous then later, and this was not a good continuation here for Alireza. After move f5, that's why Alireza tried king to g3, but now Magnus again does another mistake. He plays now the move rook king to h7. He's getting the king closer, which is actually not a good continuation, because he should have simply played on this idea that we have talked about, g6, supporting simply this pawns, supporting simply this pawn majority, and still threatening some dangerous checks with maybe if you leave the protection, then rook to e3 is dangerous. You have still options to deliver checks on the first rank. Really this was the only chance here for Magnus Carlsen to survive. Maybe look at this, after g6 you try something like rook to f2, but then you play rook to g1, even allow here maybe Alireza to take. That was, as I said, the only chance somehow for Magnus. Even if rook takes c7 happens, this is not working because of this line, rook to e3. If you, for instance, cover with rook to f3, then we play rook to e2, and we're threatening here checkmate with rook takes g2. For instance, you try rook to f2, then f4. Very dangerous. The king has to now step back from the defense, and again, a messed up position. So really wild stuff. You have to play here king to h2, but again, rook to e1 would happen again with the similar ideas. Rook to h1, check, and then rook to e3. So this is not working. That was, as I said, the only way here for Magnus Carlsen to survive. But he played actively with the king. Many of us, I think, would play here very active with the king. You're supposed to play with your king in the endgame stage, but this is not now working, because after rook to f2, this is now the motif that we have talked about, bringing the rook on the f file, forcing at least the trades of pieces, forcing maybe trades of rooks, maybe even a trade of pawns here, simplifying the game simply on the king side, where Magnus is obviously better. Rook to f2 is now good continuation here for Alireza. f4, king to f3, rook to e3 is of course not possible. We have rook to g1, king to g4, we have king to h6. Now finally Alireza can take here the pawn on c7. We have rook to e3 by Magnus, threatening a dangerous check here on g3. Alireza of course steps back here to f5, rook to e1, and actually this was again another mistake here by Magnus Carlsen. Again, maybe this idea g6 is much better here for black, but I still think white is better here because of this line, king to f6. You can maybe bring this other rook into the game, but after king to f7, no good checks for black are possible. So now finally I think we can start to push these pawns here. I think again white is a completely winning endgame. So here after king to f5, Magnus did even a worse continuation with rook to e1. Alireza delivered an annoying check with rook to c6, and after king to h5, rook to g6 was now Alireza's continuation, and in this particular position Magnus Carlsen resigned. Of course rook to g5 cannot be anymore beaten here, because there are no checks by black. This pawn is controlling the e5 square. Magnus Carlsen lost the game against Alireza Firouzja. So incredible game. The endgame master Magnus Carlsen made here many mistakes in the endgame stage. This is not what we used to see by Magnus, but of course we'll see tomorrow a different game. Magnus has also chances with the white pieces, but in the beginning also this lost pawn caused him many positional problems in the game. So deserved win, I think, here for Alireza Firouzja. He dominated through the whole game. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Really crazy Fischer Random Chess is played here. This is an amazing chess event. If you want to see more Fischer Random Chess games covered here on my YouTube chess channel, here's the link of our playlist. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.